Do you think of food as being your friend? Do you find that you reach for certain things if you're in a rush or happy or sad or maybe bored? Maybe I'm saying too much about myself. Sometimes these tasty snacks could leave you in a bit of a slump even when you least expect it. And we are living in a time where optimising each moment is a key to a productive day. But Monash researchers suggest that staple ready-made foods could be impacting your ability to learn and focus. Let's have a little chat more about some of these different foods and how they impact us. Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens is with me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Susan.
Why is psychology interested in these ultra-processed foods in particular, not just dietitians?
Well, we know that because of the connection between the mind and the body, it makes sense, doesn't it, to think about how we feel either in the lead-in to us choosing the more processed foods, but then how we feel afterwards. And what psychology has come to understand through its research, and particularly the study that you mentioned, is that these ultra-processed foods really can affect our focus and our decision-making, how well we regulate our emotions, decision-making we do. So we know those foods are really highly rewarding for us, the foods that we often desire in those particular moments. So it makes sense that it probably interacts with our motivation and habits.
And some of this does show that even a little bit can have a big impact, right?
Yeah, sadly. So it's a small increase. And that's particularly what was found in that collaborative study where they researched over 2,000 Australians and found just a small amount of processed foods was really evident to show measurable drops in people's ability to attend to things and concentrate and how well they processed the different mental tasks that they were doing. So these showed up even in people that had a relatively healthy diet overall. The impacts of these foods were quite evident.
How could what's in these foods affect our brain and even our mood?
Let's think what's in the packet. So usually if you're reading the back of the packet, and hopefully you're reading food groups, because sometimes I read the back of those packets and go, is that even food? But we do know that many of these foods, we're not surprised to see that they're high in added sugar or they've got some of those unhealthy fats and additives that usually don't have much fibre in them and so forth. So over time, it's thought that some of this combines and can promote inflammation in the body. You feel under the glycemic index, which is often spoken about, particularly for people with diabetes, that'll be familiar. So we just don't get that long-lasting effects that we get from some of the healthier, less processed foods. So we know that all impacts.
It's a bit of a short fix. It's a bit of a boom and bust type situation.
It absolutely is, and I think that's really a good indicator of when we often tend to reach for these foods. You said at the introduction, when we're busy, when we're rushed, when we're tired, when we're bored, in all of those moments, the other thing we know from psychology is that's also when our willpower is particularly low. So it's not always a great combination.
Yeah. You're hearing from Dr. Jo Lukens, a psychology consultant. Thinking of psychological patterns, what psychological patterns do you see around those ultra-processed food being used?
Yeah, I think everyone can probably relate to that loop when it comes along for us. When we've got low energy, we do seek out convenience, we do seek out easy, and that's not because of any failings in us as people. It's just the reality of when people are tired and fatigued, we try to find the easiest solution, which isn't always the best one. Then our concentration's affected. Then perhaps we don't sleep so well. Then when we don't sleep so well, we're in a bit of a grumpy mood. So then we can soon see how this starts to loop and become a habit. And what we know is that habits are great because they save us from having to think, but also sometimes habits are terrible because they save us from having to think.
Yes.
So we understand that loop.
So often cutting out things altogether is a bit of a risky thing, that sort of all or nothing. What are some of the practical strategies that we could try this week to give ourselves a better situation?
Yeah, I think the thing, if you're going to try something practical for this week, a little bit of planning would be helpful, because in the lull of the afternoon is not when you're suddenly going to come up with a great new plan. So each one of us could maybe think, is there one food, and the way I do it is if I feel like a sweet treat in the afternoon, I don't deny myself that. I don't say I can't do it. But what I do is I put a little rule in place and I go, okay, I can have the biscuit or the chocolate or whatever the thing might be after I've eaten the mandarin. I'll pick out a sweet food, and then it's like a sweet natural food, like a fruit or something like that, and go, I'll eat that first and then see how I feel. So sometimes having one go-to food that you might try, just a little experiment for yourself, maybe and start small, always start small with new habits. But I think doing that's a great way to go, and then test that out for a week and see how you feel as a result.
Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens, thanks for being with me this week.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you. Have a great day. You are on ABC Queensland.